listeners or readers. How do you know your dreaming has ended and your day has begun? Well, you're presupposing something in that sentence, right? How do you know your dreaming has ended? But that is presupposing that the dreaming has ended, right? It could be that for all that you have written so far, that you're still dreaming from what you have written here, right? Asking these weird questions when you already know it. How do you know your memories of yesterday or 10 years ago are valid? No, but how could you possibly, right? What would it mean them to be valid, right? What would it mean to be for a memory to be valid? If I have a memory of hitting my toe yesterday, how do I know it's valid? Right? How do I know I'm the only one having that fucking memory, right? Somebody else might have experienced it, but they have another memory which should be kind of similar, but still it's their memory. I don't know if they have that memory, right? It's in their mind. I don't have access to their mind, right? So I'm the one having the memory. How do I know it's valid? What do I compare it to? There's nothing to compare it to, right? I just have to, take some rational chance that it's valid, right? Okay, this is an introductory chapter, so I won't get bogged too much down, right? But it's typical for Stefan Molyneux. He throws a lot of questions at you that you cannot possibly answer, and then he proceeds to try to answer them in using sophistry or something like that, right? So let's see how we go. I don't want to poison the well, but this is my approach, right? How do you even know you are the same person as the one who got into bed last night? It gets even crazier when you really think about it. How do you know your existence is not in fact some elaborate simulation? Do you know for certain that you are not a brain in a tank wired up to some Matrix-style virtual reality? No, but a brain is another kind of experience, right? A brain is another kind of experience. That's the experience of that part of body where possibly your mind resides, right? But the view of the experience of the brain is your experiential version of the brain. It's not the brain itself, right? What you call your brain is the only access you have, which is your experience of. I hope that you haven't experienced your brain, right? But I wouldn't do that at home, right? Don't try this at home, which might possibly destroy your experience, right? This is the brain in a tank thing, Descartes, right? Look at your hand right now. You see a hand, sure, but how do you know that the hand truly exists outside your mind? Sure, you see your hand, but the image only shows up in your mind. It's the same with your sensations of your hand. They also show up in your mind. Where is the hand itself? That's very, very important. That's a good one. Now, that's interesting. I'm pretty goddamn certain that he's not going to draw the conclusions that I think he's going to draw, right? But this is interesting. I hope he returns to this one, right? I really hope he returns to this example. Look at your hand right now. Okay, let's see. I'm looking at my hand right now, right? You see a hand, yes. But how do you know that the hand truly exists outside your mind? Who says it's outside my mind? Who says? You presuppose that that's supposed to be the case, right? You are implicitly accepting the axiom that some part of your experience must be something outside your mind. You should establish that axiom before you venture further into metaphysics, right? Because you are having an experience, but there's nothing in the experience that says it has to be interpreted in a certain way. So you can start by saying, I have experience, and then you can start to sort of interpret that experience. Just jumping into that part of my experience is something outside. That's a jump you have to axiomize, right? You have to make it as an axiom because there's nothing you can do to check whether or not this is the case. So, and truly exist. What's the difference between exist and truly exist? Another thing is, if it's outside your mind, how can you have access to it, right? How can you have access or experience of something that is outside your mind if you define the mind as that encompasses all experiences? So if you have to have an experience of your hand to know about it, then that experience cannot be outside your mind. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the experience, right? It doesn't work. So if you're saying this hand is outside my mind, you can't be talking about something outside my mind. It must be inside my mind so that I can have the experience, right? Otherwise, if it was outside my mind, I wouldn't have the experience. So you saying this hand is outside, or me saying potentially that this hand is outside my mind, is an interpretation of an experience inside my mind. Right? You see your hand, yeah, but the image or the experience, I would call it, right, shows up in your mind. Yes, the image of it, but your interpretation of it as being outside is only, as I said, an interpretation, right? And you have to establish that axiomatically because there's no other way to establish that from your base experience, from your base qualia, which is the reduction base, right? You can't go any deeper than that, in my opinion, right? So if you say that the hand is outside your mind, that which is outside is not what you experience, right? It can't be. If it's outside your mind, it can't be. If you say this is my hand, okay, but the experience must be inside my mind. Even if I have a very, very strong urge to experience it as outside my mind. But the experience of it can't be outside my mind. It must be inside my mind. So if I'm referring to this as being outside, that which is outside then is not what I experience. It must be something else that I do not have access to exactly because it is outside my mind, right? That is what Immanuel Kant calls the things themselves, not the experience, right? Not the direct experience. The direct experience is your experience. You have nothing else. You're just saying that it's outside. But what you're really saying that is that experience which I have on the inside is a representation of something outside, which I do not have access to. That's as close as you can get by axioms, right? Alone, right? That's it. That's all. Okay, let's hope he gets back to that. Last night in your dreams, you also had hands or claws or tentacles or heaven knows what that did not exist or move in what you call the real world. In your dreams, you visit a floating island full of dragons that does not exist outside your dreamscape, or does it? Perhaps your dreams are the real world and your waking life is the dream. How can you know for certain? Perhaps the people you live with are mere avatars, artificial intelligence simulation of human beings. Perhaps they were all real people at some point, but have... Stop this. Space aliens. When you went to a movie last night, perhaps the entire cinema complex was a former elaborate theater. Perhaps you were in a movie watching a movie. What if you're created anew every day from scratch? Groundhog Day. But with a steady, if inconsistent series of progressive memories layered into your newly hatched brain. What about your memory? Is it real? But what is real? You have to decide. You can't just presuppose the question. What is real? What are you talking about? Is it real? What do you mean by real? Right? That's the question. What does it mean to be real? As I said before, you're just jumping into axioms as if they are self-explanatory. What's the word? As if they are, beyond that, they are built-in axioms, sort of. But you have to identify the axiom or the jump or the leap you take. You have to identify the axiom so people can choose whether or not to follow your axioms. These are the cornerstones throughout your long chain of first principle philosophy. At every turn that you make a new axiom, people can say, I don't agree with that. And then they can stop listening to you, right? Because from then on, they know that they won't agree, right? So that's why you have to identify the axioms, the leaps you take. You can't just ask the question presumptuously or presumably, what's it called? Presupposedly, right? It's like the old question, when did you stop beating your wife, right? But who said I've beaten my wife, right? Is it real? Well, what do you mean by real? Huh? Is it real? You are sophistically turning your listener or your reader away from the essential question. And it is called essential philosophy, isn't it, right? Recalled events are gone, lost in time. Your memory only exists in your mind. What if you or something else is altering it over time? Think of your very first memory. Is it real? Think of other early memories. Could they have been created in your mind by stories you heard as a child? Well, yes, sometimes if you have seen a picture a lot of times in your early childhood and later in childhood, you sometimes can be confused whether or not you actually remember the experience itself or you remember the movie or the photograph of the experience, right? I can feel that sometimes, right? Try this on for size. Go and visit your childhood neighborhood. I guarantee you that it will neither look nor feel exactly as you remember it, and sometimes not even approximately, even if little has changed. Look at a picture of yourself as a child. Where has that child gone? When you build a foundation for a house, the finished house still has that foundation. But what still remains of your childhood, body and mind? You are not like some Russian doll with smaller versions of yourself remaining inside. No, that's... The human body is replaced over time, every 7 years. So they say. Maybe that's the 7-year itch when you're... With little to nothing left from your past physical self, where are your memories? Are your memories like the childhood game of broken telephone, irretrievably lost in endless translation? Invite childhood friends and siblings over for dinner and discuss shared past events. What perception do you all have in common? I guarantee you that others will have very strong memories that are significantly different from yours, sometimes even opposing them completely. What does that mean? You were all in the same place, experiencing the same things, but you have very different memories. Nothing remains of the events except the memories, the interpretations, and everyone's story about the events. So tell me, what is real? But you have only talking about memories. Memories are like, it's sort of a series of little books or something you have on a memory shelf somewhere in your mind, right? Why are you talking about that? Because it cannot only, it's your experience of your hand that is interesting, not your memory of your childhood, right? It cannot possibly be knowledge because it's a memory, right? If you have home movies of your childhood, sit down with your family and review on what are the various interpretations of what is objectively happening on the screen. When your sister made fun of you, was it playful ribbing as she remembered, or was it painful teasing as you remember it? Even recorded objectivity rarely leads to objectivity. But these are things that cannot be objective, right? Why do they need to be objective? Explain why those sort of events have to be objective, right? Because her playful ripping was her experience, right? And your painful teasing was your experience. There doesn't have to be one explanation of what is going on. There are possibly as many explanations of what is going on as there are observers to that event. Why can't you accept it? Why does it have to be objective? What does that mean? And you can say, if I experience an elephant, right, I could call that objective because it's an object. But what would that add to my experience that I call it objective? I just call it an elephant, right? I experience elephant. Okay, and I can call it objective. What layer am I adding? Well, nothing but the extra word. So if we are talking about some clarification between people whether or not something is objective, right? If you're alone on an island, why would you need objectivity? You just experience banana or coconut or lizard, right? And that's it. Why would you? No. I have to sit down and figure out whether or not that lizard is objective. That's not what you do, right? So if Tom Hanks is there on a deserted island, he doesn't care about whether or not something is objective. Well, if Tom Cruise crashes in his F-16 Maverick and in his parachute and lands there, well, all of a sudden they have to kind of agree upon what is going on and what exists outside in their experience. If they are the only one having the experience to agree about it, they have to find an agreement, and that's what I call objectivity, right? If Tom Hanks says that's an elephant or that's a coconut, and Tom Hanks says that's true, well, then they agree about that existence outside, even though they only have their own particular subjective experience of it, right? So they agree on that object. That's objectivity. But if Tom Hanks walks towards the coconut, then Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks might make a story about it. He might make the story he is trying to steal the coconut, right? Maybe Tom Cruise is saying, I'll grab this coconut and give it to Tom Hanks, right? So they each have a story. How would you possibly interpret this as one particular objective story, right? Because there's no object to objectify except that's a coconut, right? That's all you can do. You can't point to, that action is whatever, right? There's no object. There's only the coconut. The actions are all interpretations, and your mind and your emotions and whatever, right? They are absolutely and purely subjective. It can not even be objectified. So you're shooting yourself through the knee to hit your foot, right? And kicking yourself in the balls on the ass at the same time. Even if you remember the same events as your siblings, you can each end up with entirely opposing interpretations. A father hits his children. One child remembers violent abuse. The other remembers stern but loving discipline. A sister believes it made her a better person. A brother believes it harmed him deeply. A mother has an affair. Yeah, these are all subjective things that cannot be agreed upon, right? You could maybe agree upon it, but if there's a disagreement, there's no way to get to agreement, right? A mother has an affair. Her daughter sympathizes with her loneliness. Her son condemns her as selfish. You grew up poor. You resent it. Your brother thinks it built character. One of your toddlers loves the noisy vacuum cleaner. The other screams and flees in terror. Is either interpretation the true nature of the vacuum cleaner? But, well, loving a sound is not a part of it. If you love noisy, right? Love noisy is not a true nature or a nature of something, right? Loving something is particular to the subject experiencing the object, the vacuum cleaner, right? It makes a sound. Okay, you loving it or not is not a part of the vacuum cleaner, right? Is either interpretation the true nature of the vacuum cleaner. None of them are the true nature of the vacuum cleaner. You don't even understand that your subjective experiences are not a part of the vacuum cleaner, man. Oh my fucking God, right? Oh. One mother loves cooking for a family, another resents it as a repetitive chore. Let us go deeper. Whoa. As we can always go deeper. Oh yeah, I love it, baby. Give it to me. Give it to me. The whole 9 yards. Oh. We can always go. Let us go deeper. We can always go deeper. Oh, I love it. Here is another challenge. You claim that you have an identity. Okay, what's an identity? You don't grab some third party and say, oh, I have an identity. No, you talk from your own point of view, right? Define what an identity is. Right? Define it before you start to talk about it, right? You just said it's very important in your argument book, right? So defining terms, right? This is the first time you see the term identity. Maybe I should, from the experience from the last book, make a note of particular words and how they're used throughout the book and whether or not they're being defined, right? Identity. Okay. And that you are your own person. What does it mean to be your own person? Of course. But what does that really mean? Let us say that you are a Christian. What is that? I have to look in the mirror. Am I a Christian? Can I see any Christianity on me? Well, where is it? Point to it, right? You're an empiricist, right? If you're saying that apple is green, right? You can look at the freaking apple, right? If you say that person is Christian, can you look and see that Christianity or Christianhood, Christianness, right? No. So you're already trying to blur the lines between what exists and what can possibly exist and what can only be, freaky mental delusions, right? And you consider your religion a feature of your own personal identity. If at birth you had been adopted by a Zoroastrian family, you would surely have been brought up in that family's religion, and you would now consider being a Zoroastrian part of your own personal identity. Wasn't Freddie Mercury one of those in the family Zoroastrian? If you were brought up in a house of Democrats or liberals or leftists, you would likely be more willing to inherit that political perspective. How much of you is distinct from what you have inherited? If you merely inherited a trait, is it really you? How much of your personality is largely inherited genetic and genetic and beyond your capacity to change significantly? How much of yourself do you think you have chosen, earned, built with your own mental bare hands? How often do you condemn other people's personalities as if other people somehow magically just chose who they are? Well, I want to just make a little pause here and say, I know this is an introductory chapter, but for an introduction, it's very annoying getting thrown tons of questions in your face, right? He's trying to numb the reader, right? He's bitch slapping the reader into, okay, now you have to go and listen to me because I'm the only one who can give you the answer, sort of, right? It's not, carefully inviting, slowly building a story, sort of like that, right? Not telling, okay, I'm going to do it this way, and I'm, whatever. At least that's, if you have an introduction, or this structure of the book, it would, in my opinion, it would be natural to give a little, when we're dealing with philosophy, like my approach will be this. If it's not implicit in your approach, then you would use an introductory chapter to tell you what your approach is, right? Otherwise, the first word in your book has to point in the direction that gives the reader breathing room or thinking room and carrying them through whatever it is you need, where you need to go on that journey, so to say, that philosophical journey, or that all those axioms or first principles, and from this comes this, and this must follow this, and so on. In this case, you're just throwing all sorts of weird questions and memories, and dragons, and noisy vacuum cleaners in people's faces. You're all over the place. It's sort of totally stressed, right? And it must be a very confusing mind you have, right? Because there's no structure in it, seemingly, right? You're all over the place, and it's not a delightful read, right? Getting bitch slapped like this is not very interesting, right? And to be honest, it's just I'm not trying to get at you personally. It's not an ad hominem. It's just my personal gut feeling from the way you approach writing. And it feels very much like the underlying agenda and connecting the dots in a confirmation bias type of situation, right? It's just not. I'm a little prejudiced from your other books. I can't help that, right? So, and this has all the hallmarks of the other books, so to say, right? It might be better, it might be worse. Who knows? Let's see how it goes, right? But it's just this way of throwing bricks at you from the get-go, right out of the gate. You're just shooting left and right. Maybe you could use higher caliber shots, but still, right? What if this, and how much of this, and what if that, and what could be this, could be that, and all it's like, oh no, man. And I'm a self-taught, fairly decently trained philosopher or philosophically minded person who are sort of used to thinking along these lines. I have a hard time trying to follow the thread through this text, and God only knows how hard it would be for your average person who might be wandered past into this book and said, I want to know what's going on Earth, right? And then you're just being bitch slapped from the right out of the gate, right? So it's just like, okay. What if your judgmental nature is not completely your choice, but partly genetic? You say that you are tall or short, but height is also a function of your genetics. No. Height is not the same as tall or short, right? He doesn't even understand that, right? It's in the same sentence, so he must refer to the same methodology or something like that, right? A quantification. Tall is you can't measure tall, right? You can't measure short. You can measure a height from a certain definition, from the standing up, and if you follow these rules and I have this stick, I can measure your height. But tall and short are not heights. These are comparisons between heights, right? If you take two persons of different height and compare them, one is tall and the other is short, but that's not their heights. That's the comparison of their heights. My God! Errors like this, right? It's like you're saying, I'm fucking stupid, I don't know what I'm saying, right? You haven't even tried to error correct these things, right? Try to find stupid little errors like this. You say that you're tall or you're short, but height is also a function of your genetics. But tall or short is not height. Okay, you could say, okay, this is just, average language and, everyday language and so on. Okay. But then it's not philosophy, right? It's essential philosophy, this. There's something you have to live up to. You have to do it correctly and without any possible confusion, right? Now people may think that tall or short are heights. Okay, you can take pride in parts of your personality and achievements. You may be hardworking or very honest. but significant aspects of your personality and achievements are genetic. Your intelligence is largely genetic. Your conscientiousness, your level of social comfort. 1 second, please. I have to see how far to the next chapter. Your charisma, these largely arise from unchosen biological influences, though we often take personal pride in that which we have biologically inherited. Do you consider yourself a conservative, liberal, or something else? If you are a male conservative, did you know that trait is 64.5% heritable? No, I don't know that, and I can't know that, because that's a kind of statistic, and that is not knowledge, right? For women, it is 44.7. Okay, that might have changed since you wrote the book, right? So it's kind of stupid to mention these sort of exact numbers. To describe yourself, you need language, of course. If English is your native tongue, you possess a unique set of words by which you may describe yourself, some of which do not even exist in other languages. Think of how much of your personal identity, that which you call a self, has been influenced by the work of others, writers, movie makers, actors, singers, and teachers, and so on. Your language, your culture, your family, your schooling, some of your accidental exposure to these thoughts and feelings of others, all of these influences have shaped you, but they did not originate within you. No, that's a good point. I like that one. I'll keep that one. Even if you could accurately say, I was influenced by Bob, you have merely moved the chain of causality one step away. Who was Bob influenced by? How many of his capacities and perspectives were chosen? Were you influenced by Bob's thoughts or Bob's genetics? How can the things that influenced you or Bob be accurately separated? So there's a lot of questions asked here, right? I can see that you would want to, in an introductory chapter, you would want to, start people up a bit, right? And see, there's these interesting questions that we need, but he doesn't take the beaten path of rigid philosophy out of fear that people are going to find it boring, I guess, right? So he's taking this middle of the road kind of loose language to lure people in. And I guess there could be a point in that. I understand the approach, but I just find it a little annoying that you're getting slammed these questions in, because when you start to read a book, personally, I hate introductory chapters, right? All that comes before the main text, right? It's just like old movies where there's a list of all these people were in the movie, and just text, right? I know it has been optimized a bit through the years, right? But it's just sort of, let's get it over with and get to the point, right? So I'm more in, when I write the book, I'm going directly into starting the text. I'm no introduction, no, what's it called? Where you list all the content of the book. Contents. Yeah, content list. I don't. That's a better word, I think, for it, right? I just head directly into philosophy. Why not? I mean, I will only mention before the main text whatever is absolutely necessary from publisher side, or international standard book number, or ISBN, or what it's called, right? And all these things that has to be there, because of that's how that's the deal you have to do when you publish books. But apart from that, I will go straight into philosophy, right? No introductions, no acknowledgements, no whatever, right? No fancy quotes or anything. Pure philosophy, right? I would love that, right? That's the kind of, I'm writing the kind of book I would love to have had if I was starting out in philosophy and saying, where the hell should I go? What should I read? What should I do? And you find a list of the 25 greatest book of philosophy. Start here, and this was a total of 20,000 pages or something like that, right? And it doesn't work that way, right? So I'm going with the approach, this is the kind of book I would want to have if I was starting out in philosophy, right? That deals with everything under the sun and still carries you through it, right? It's not easy. I've been doing it for more than 4 years. And I've written so far about 20 pages. But I have rewritten those 20 pages like forever, right? I'm incrementally finding the best approach, and going back to the drawing board, finding a new approach, going back to the drawing board, finding a new approach, right? It has to be perfect from the start, in my opinion. If it isn't perfect from the start, it doesn't matter, because you are not going to be taken seriously, right? Every single freaking argument has to hang together with all the other arguments throughout the whole book, right? From the deepest levels of metaphysics to applying a moral principle, right? Everything has to hang together. That's the challenge, right? Because if you can't make these arguments hang together from A to C, the reader should actually conclude that you don't know what you're talking about. If you can't get things to hang together, it's like building a car and then there's a fifth wheel lying on the floor over there, right? On the ground. And they say, well, what about that fifth wheel? And that's a part of the car, but it's lying there on the ground. Yeah, but it's a part of the car. It ought to be, but it doesn't fit anywhere, right? But what's or there's a big hole. The one corner of the car is missing. You're saying, but what about that corner there? No, that's how it should be. I have argued, this is how, I've drawn it and everything. There's something missing here, right? There's something, and then that wheel over there. No, if the philosophy is great, you should have this sort of shiny, cohesive, hanging together, easy to understand, intuitive, sort of just, what's it called? Turn the wheel and, step on the gas and so on. Turn the ignition and so on, right? It's like, when the first time you saw an iPhone, it was not like what the hell is this, right? It was like, I see, okay, the icons, and then it opens up, I see, I get it, okay, this hangs together with that, that kind of emotion, that kind of sense, right? That is not quite the sense I get from reading this. This is, bitch slapping you with, questions that possibly won't get answered, right? But let's see, right? What I don't like in philosophy is when people ask a question and then just leave it hanging in the air, right? And what I will be looking for is this one. Look at your hand right now. You see a hand, sure, but how do you know that hand is truly exist outside of your mind? This is deep level metaphysics, right? I want this freaking answered in a cohesive manner later at some point, right? Okay. How far did I get? Perhaps we are all just predetermined dominoes falling on each other under the pretense of choice. So what does it mean to have an identity? Well, what is an identity? Why are you not defining terms? You just told me in your book about argument you need to define. Well, you just brought in identity, and now we have to find out what it means to have an identity. What is an identity? Why do you bring in that term? Yeah, and that's the word I wrote down here, right, on my small to-do list. Do you see what I mean? Not exactly, but I might have an idea. Everything we do is philosophical. Okay, so now I am this box in which I have my glasses. They are not here at the moment. They are at the other end of the room. Possibly, I think, I don't know it. I have a memory of where they are, but I don't know where they are. But I have a memory, and that is my evidence, possibly, for finding my real glasses. I might go and do that, but let's hang on. I can read this text here without my glasses, but I am going to do something, and I want you to tell me. You are pretending to sitting right in front of me and looking at me, right? And you're going to tell me what is philosophical about this. Look carefully. Look carefully. Wow. See what I did? I can do it the other way. Wow. See, everything I do is philosophical. Would you mind telling me where the philosophical is? Where is it? I don't know. When most people think of the word faith, they generally refer to a belief in God. Well, in that introductory chapter, you are talking about faith, right? You are trying to make sure that all your new Christian friends are coming along, right? You just need to, I'll mention God. I'm not going to, be atheist and, reject faith or God or anything. No, I got to lure them into my fold because they have a lot of money, They are giving me great donations and they like the orange man, right? We have faith in ourselves, our existence, memories, or history, or... I went too far. Let's take it again. When most people think of the word faith, they generally refer to a belief in God. But it is much more accurate to say that we have faith in reality. We have faith in ourselves, our existence, memories, or history, our relationships, the evidence of our senses, the virtue of our choices. We have few, if any, real philosophical certainties in these areas. We accept that we have to... Okay, so these are sort of a weak form of establishing axioms, in my opinion, right? Faith is a very, very bad argument for anything, right? I'm just going to trust what everybody tells me. Order to survive, to get through the day, to find shelter and food and love, hopefully. Somebody find me somebody to love. Your young son steals a candy bar from a store. You rebuke him, march him back into the store, perhaps punish him. But why? What objective, universal moral principles did your son violate? But who says there are? What objective? What? You're presupposing that there are such things as objective universal moral principles. Is this presupposing things in this chapter that really gets my fucking blood boiling, right? This is sophistry. This is not philosophy, right? When did you stop beating your wife, right? This is the when did you stop beating your wife question, right? It's manipulation. How do you know that they are true or good? Where do they exist in reality? How many question marks are there? I might try to search in question marks. I'll make a note of that. I will search for question marks on to the next part. Hang on. I'll be right back. How do you know that they are true or good? Where do they exist in reality? Do you punish your son because you fear the disapproval of others? I know that these could be sort of rhetorical questions, but they're still questions, right? Are you afraid that people will think you are a bad parent because you raised a thief? A thief? So now you can label a person as a thief, right? Now it turned from a human being into an alien of some kind, right? It's just now, look, that's a thief. So you're labeled from now on and onto the rest of time, you are a thief, right? That's another Christian malfunction, right? Do you punish your son because there is a subjective social convention? Oh, now that's subjective, right? Okay. Convention against stealing. Now you're not calling morality. Now you are calling it subjective social convention. So it's just you're getting thrown the whole library in your face out of the gate, right? Is that how you describe it to him? No, surely you will tell him that it is wrong to steal, that he is bad for stealing, that it is immoral, and so on. But how do you know? Good question, right? That's a good question. How do you know? That's epistemology, right? And particularly around ethics. Then it's even more. How do you know about ethics, right? If it can't be known at all. If you are a Christian, you have a pretty good idea. One of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not steal. But that exists in the realm of theology, not philosophy. The realm of theology, that exists. Do you have any idea how stupid this is? The realm. So now you have made, you just said that everything is fucking philosophy, right? Didn't you? Everything you do is philosophical. Everything that is happening is philosophical. Okay, so what is this one? The realm of theology. Is there two realms? This is the philosophy realm. This is the theology realm. What is that? Why didn't you say something like everything is you do is philosophical, unless we are in the theological realm, then it's theological or something like that, right? Why do you leave this separate room for theology? It's like, okay, I'm not going to touch theology. All the Christians, you are welcome to listen to my, sophistry. And if you can find something and give me money, I would like it. But you have theology. Oh, you have a playground called theology over here. And that's the children's table. They can sit there and have all their theology they want. And I'm not going to criticize it. It's just like another realm that is untouchable by philosophy, right? Holy shit, it's bullshit, right? If you are atheist or agnostic, how do you know that stealing is wrong? So, okay, so you have to be something before you can do rigid philosophy, right? It's like, okay, we are going to leave all the Christians over there. They have their solution, and we don't have to argue with them. You don't have to do anything, not the art of the argument or anything. No, they leave them alone. They have their own ideas, right? We have to deal with them, but they have their own ideas. We can't touch them because they have sort of this, what's it called? I'm looking for a word. They have this sort of insight of some kind that makes them able to be in the realm of theology, and that's untouchable by philosophy. So if you're an atheist or agnostic, how do you? So you have, if you don't follow the rules of theology, you have to figure out how to. But so you're not criticizing the 10 commandments. People are going around using 10 commandments while you're saying, yeah, it's fine, use your 10 commandments because you're a theologian, but we over here are going to try to find another commandment. It's fine that you have 10 commandments. We have to deal with you. We have to find common ground and objectivity and all that, but I'm just not pretending to, listen to you or anything. I'm not criticizing theology because that's not my business. I want your money, you see, right? If you are atheist or agnostic, how do you know that stealing is wrong? Because it makes people unhappy? That argument is scarcely philosophical. Well, the 10 commandments are not philosophical, right? It's not philosophical. No, but it's theology. I don't give a shit what you call it, right? Everything is philosophical, right? That's basically what you said in the first words. And I'm going to take, hang you upon it, right? You can't say, oh yeah, everything is, except if you are a theologian, then it's not philosophical, then it's theological, right? Bullshit. It's so sophist, this, right? This is so sophist. It drips with sophistry, right? The argument is scarcely philosophical. A lot of things make people unhappy without being immoral. A negative movie review makes the filmmakers unhappy and can cost them millions of dollars. Unless it's springtime for Hitler, then it's different. Go watch the movie. But it is neither illegal nor immoral to write a negative movie review if you write it honestly. Oh, but how would you know if you're not the writer? Right? Also, your son can argue that getting the candy bar without paying makes him happy, so it totally evens out. Perhaps you invoke the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and ask your son if he would like it if others stole from him. However, he may just reply that he does not care. And then what could you say? Maybe he is the biggest kid around, and no one would dare, relying on his empathy for future self and for the feelings of others only works if he already has empathy. Well, what parents do and are is afraid of other grown-up peoples. They want their children to behave so they don't get ostracized or whatever it is, right? So kids have to follow whatever fucking rules the grown-up are following. Otherwise, the grown-ups, not the children, will get some ramifications if they don't follow along or rock the boat or something like that. So what parents do are just saying to the children, do as you are fucking told, right? That's how ridiculously bad parents are, right? They don't care what rules there are, just as long as their fucking kids follow the freaking rules, right? That's all they care about. Don't rock the boat, right? We are dependent on other people, and we have to follow whatever strange ideas they have, not to get thrown to the curb, right? Most morality is like a diet book for slim people. If you are morally sensitive, then you will generally accept moral arguments, but then you tend to be the kind of person least in need of moral arguments. Well, that's not actually a very good thing to be sensitive to moral arguments, because there are no identified moral principles. You could refer maybe to Immanuel Kant, but I think it's not well argued, right? And it doesn't work because you don't know. You can classify your own ideas of your actions as being good, right? As you see fit, so it doesn't work. I mean, it can't work. Can't work, right? But then you tend to be the kind of person least in need of moral arguments. Morality needs to be powerful enough to overcome the indifference of truly selfish people. Morality that requires the leverage of self-criticism has virtually no power over narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths, who have little to no capacity for self-criticism. Oh. So which one are you, Mr. Molyneux, right? Are you the narcissist? Huh? Sociopath? Psychopath? I don't know. You don't seem to have any or very little capacity for self-criticism, in my opinion, right? When your shows are, you call them a debate or a chat or something, and all there is you talking, and your acolytes are asking you some question, right? And if they don't ask the right question, you will sort of lambaste them and tell them they're stupid or idiot, or they have some problem with their psychology or something like that, and kick them out of this system, right? That's what you call a debate or a chat. To me, it's like you don't have self-criticism, right? And in a recent video, you're just like, well, I have solved this Hume's is-ought problem. It's just like hand waving, right? I don't even have to look at it anymore. It's so stilted, right? God, man. If you care about others, you will most likely be good, with or without moral arguments. If you do not care, moral arguments will have no real sway over you. When you start to explore definitions, the questions of theft becomes even more complicated. If theft means taking property without permission or using force against the will of its legitimate owner, then what is taxation? If you try to legitimize taxation by appealing to the democratic will of the majority, aren't you just encouraging your son to get a few friends to go with him to the convenience store, where they will then outvote the owner on who gets the candy bars? Can immorality be legitimized by the majority? If two men vote to rape one woman, surely that does not make rape any less immoral. Surely but what they will do is they will redefine rape as something else, right? Surely our highest aspirations as moral instruction cannot be to teach our children to submit to or join the majority mob. I don't like the term our children, but I'll let it pass. Perhaps we teach our children. There it is again. I don't like that, our children. There's no our children, right? That self-sacrifice is the highest universal moral ideal, that they should give up their own preferences and aspirations in order to serve the needs of others. But if self-sacrifice is a universal moral ideal, then it cannot possibly be be applied universally. If Bob sacrifices for Doug, then Doug cannot simultaneously sacrifice for Bob. There are those who sacrifice and those who collect that sacrifice. Those who pay and those who receive. If self-sacrifice is a universal moral ideal, then those who collect that sacrifice rather than provide it must be immoral, since they are profiting from other people's self-sacrifice rather than sacrificing themselves. But if the highest moral ideal requires other people to be immoral, how can it be universally good? Who says, well, what's universally good, right? You're presupposing all sorts of things that sort of, slaps people into submission of some kind. Perhaps we teach our children that they should obey authority figures. Listen to your teacher, obey your father, etc., right? However, they then learn from history that horrifying atrocities were often committed by those obeying authority figures. Sometimes perhaps it is good to obey authority figures. Other times it's a great evil to obey authority figures. How can we teach them the difference? Is there a moral authority higher than secular authority? How are morals justified? How do we know? Yeah. I think this is the problem. There's no such thing as moral authority. Any kind of moral authority should be rejected. There is no moral authority, for the simple reason that all experiences are subjective. They can only be agreed upon in what I call objectivity. But there has to be individual experience in order to reach objectivity. And every individual participating in that objectivity is one of those moral authorities. So if everybody is on an even level of moral authority, there actually isn't a moral authority, because there's no one person who is raised above anybody else who can order people around according to their moral authority. Right? Okay, this is the end of part one. The next one will be the tortures of philosophy. Right? Okay. The tortures of philosophy. Don't you just like this colorful language, right? Oh, by the way, colorful language is made by sophists, right? According to Stefan Molyneux himself in the book I last deconstructed, which was The Art of the Argument. Okay, see you in part 2.